Welcome to the Hump Day Hangout podcast by Semantic Mastery, where we answer your local SEO questions every week at 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm Adam Moody, and my partner at Semantic Mastery, Bradley Benner, will be sharing his decades of expertise based on not only helping others, but running his own agencies and businesses in the space. If you'd like to join us live on YouTube each week, just go to www.semanticmastery.com/HDHO at 4 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. If you'd like to ask a question ahead of time, go to the same link, www.semanticmastery.com/HDHO at any time and submit it there. Don't forget, you can get the Semantic Mastery Local SEO Toolkit for free at the same URL. Okay, let's get going with this episode.
Hello and welcome to Hump Day Hangouts. This is episode 548 on the 28th of May 2025. And in this episode, Adam is again running in the woods somewhere. So he's not showing up. Other than that, it's pretty cold here at the moment in Austria as well. After it was quite warm like earlier. So yeah, gotta deal with that. And Bradley is almost over and I think moved into his new home already, right?
Close, damn close. This is my last. Tonight might be my last night in this RV. At least as my residence, because I leave tomorrow to go back to Northern Virginia to get my last load of furniture that's up there because that's where I lived. So I'm going to my. It just so happens my niece is also graduated. She just graduated high school, so we have a graduation ceremony for her tomorrow, or a celebration, I should say, for not tomorrow, but over the weekend on Saturday. So going up to Northern Virginia was just good timing. I'm going to go up there to visit her, to be there to support her for graduating, and then at the same time pick up my last load of furniture and everything, which is good. And then I'll come back Sunday, and I should be able to move this RV off this campsite, and I'll be staying at my house in Pikeville, Kentucky for the first time Sunday night. At least I hope so. So next week I plan on being in front of my desktop computer again with a great big monitor, and oh my God, my productivity is going to shoot through the roof again because I'll be on an actual desktop computer instead of a laptop. So I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm after a year and almost 2 years. It's been like 20 months that I've been in this RV, and I'm ready to get out of it.
Sweet.
Ready to move into a home. So it's
Quick
coming.
question. Did you also update the website?
I think I did actually. Yeah.
Just checking in on that everyone
Glad you did.
can
Okay,
access.
so moving on. What are the local mastery newsletter? We need to talk about that. So let's
Yeah.
promote that. Give me 1 second. I'm updating this URL right now. Okay, so if anybody's watching and they just refresh the Hump Day Hangout page URL, it should come to
All
the
working now.
should be working. Yeah,
Good. So you mentioned this new newsletter. So what's up with that?
Yeah, the local mastery newsletter, guys. That's our new newsletter, which is basically summaries of webinars that I host on a weekly basis. And so, I do a webinar every Thursday, and the newsletter is basically a summary of that. It's like actionable items. It's not just a summary. It's like actionable items. It's been formatted properly and all that kind of stuff. I think it's phenomenal. I think the way that Adam produces these is done really well, in my opinion. Some of you may have noticed I've started doing a State of Local SEO Insights video series as part of Semantic Mastery YouTube channel. And each week, what I'm doing is just on Mondays, I will just go in and just kind of review what we've been discussing in the Semantic Mastery Mastermind community over the previous week. And then I will also kind of go through what I covered in the previous week's webinar. So basically what I've been doing in the local SEO, State of Local SEO Insights series is I'm pulling up the newsletter and just kind of reviewing and talking, narrating what the newsletter is saying with some additional detail, et cetera. But more on a conceptual level, I'm not going into like deep training and all of that. That's what our webinars are for inside the mastermind. But it's really just to kind of make people more aware of what we're discussing in our mastermind community, what the hot topics are, what I've been covering in my training sessions, et cetera. So the newsletter is very inexpensive. There's a free version of it. There's also a paid version, which is $29 a month or $250 for a year. So I would encourage you guys to go check it out. Very actionable items. Like I think they're done phenomenally well. And that's at localmastery.semanticmastery.com.
I put a link in already in the chat. It's literally the best SEO actionable letter that is available right now, in my opinion.
It's good. I think it's really good because it's not fluffy. Like in other words, there's not a bunch of shit in there just to fill it up with more words. SEOs always think like, oh, I've got a page that's not performing all that well. So what should I do? Just throw more words onto the page, right? That's what SEOs do. And so typically I've seen a lot of these types of newsletters that are just very um, verbose when they don't need to be. And so we've kept ours very like Reader's Digest like in that it's
Yep.
just the essence of what I was covering. So, and in action items. So anyway, all right. What else do we got?
I think that's it for today. Like as usual, I hope everyone who is watching this gives us a like on YouTube and subscribes to our channel so they are updated and getting notified about all the future updates and are always up ahead of the curve. And I think, are there any updates on the mastermind at the moment?
No, nothing new other than, well, actually there is one more thing that, automations for booking the sales call from the listing delivery notification to the DHA program. So essentially remember, this is available to everybody in our mastermind. You don't have to be part of the DHA coaching program in order to have access to all of this. But we had in my own local SEO agency, TreeCare HQ, we've been working with a company, an AI development company, to develop some AI agents that help to facilitate booking the sales call appointments. So essentially, when we go through the process of we do cold outreach to companies in the industry that we've selected. So in my industry, it's tree care companies. When they respond via cold email, they automatically get the contact gets webhooked, so piped into high level, and then there's automations that were built that had an AI integration that would then further kind of warm that contact up and communicate with the contact and ask some follow-up questions like, what is your service area radius? Like, how far out do you drive to get jobs? Those types of things. And so this was all automated using a combination of high level plus AI. And once the listing has been created and published by my team, then they just add a tag to the contact, listing dash ready, like READY, right? Listing ready. And then that triggers the automations, the listing delivery sequence, which is to the ultimate conversion goal of that sequence is to book a sales call, which is the listing delivery call, which is the start of the sales conversation. And so we had worked on that for a year and tested different messaging, different timing between messages, different messages, all that kind of stuff, and eventually got it to where it's working quite well consistently. And so then I had to develop a second version of those automations that didn't have the AI integration because a lot of our program members, DHA program members, aren't really at the point yet where they want to pay for the AI agent because there's an expense to that. And so I wanted to create two versions of the automations that I developed or that we developed, not just me. I had a lot of help from one of our members, Cecilia, and I appreciate her very much for that. But anyways, we have two versions of them. One with AI integration, which is fully automated. Then we have a semi-automated version, which does not have the AI integration. That way it reduces the overhead. And what I'm recommending to the DHA program members are that they start with the semi-automated method while they are developing and fine-tuning, dialing their sales process in, because that is the whole point of the DHA program is to start booking more sales calls so that you can get your sales presentation and pitch dialed in so that you can start selling more services more consistently and get your cash flow up. And so the idea is to use the semi-automated workflows to while you're developing and refining the sales process and your offer too, because remember, it doesn't take much selling if you have a good offer. So you should focus more on your offer and find an attractive offer because then the sale becomes so much easier. But in any case, refining the offer and the sales process, once you have that to where it's consistent, you're consistently generating calls or booking sales calls, and then consistently closing them too, at least to a decent conversion rate. Then you can then upgrade to use the AI integrated workflows for automations as well, because now you'll have the revenue coming in to cover the expense. And I'm not trying to discourage anybody from using the AI integrations right out of the gate, but many people don't want to because they don't want to spend the additional money. So I had to go through and I spent an entire week working on developing these automations as automated as I could get them in high level without the AI integration. And so all of that is now available. I'm a little bit behind in recording the training videos and the SOP for how all of it works. I was hoping to get to that this week, and so far I haven't had a chance to. But I'm thinking Friday, I'm traveling all day tomorrow, but I'm thinking Friday I should be able to get to some of those training videos. So my goal is by Monday, close of business on Monday of next week. So June 2nd, I should have the SOP training and videos done for how those non-AI integrated automations work. And that will also be added into the mastermind. So that is kind of that is a big update. I was like, no, there's not much updates. That is a big update because I spent an enormous amount of time developing those automations without the AI integration. And I had to go through and test all of them. Like any of you that use high level, you know what I'm talking about. Every time you develop any sort of automation on high level, you have to test it. And it's a lot of trial and error to get it to work the way that you intended it to. But everything is working good. So hopefully by close of business Monday, I'll have all the training videos and the SOP done for that last component. And then the DHA phase 1 program is complete. The whole fucking thing complete from start to end. So we're going to be launching phase 2 next. Probably in July, I think, is when we're going to actually start that. And that's only a 6-week program. That is for the sales and fulfillment side of things. So how to sell the services and how to fulfill them. The whole first component is about getting the marketing and lead generating machine up and running so that you can book more sales calls. The second phase is how to sell and how to fulfill those. So that's what will be coming up next. So there were some pretty big developments.
There are a couple other big developments, like what we talked about in Tuesday, but I think we cannot talk about it yet.
Yeah, we'll wait.
All right, cool. Then I think that's it for now, and let's jump into the questions.
All right, well, let's go ahead and do that. We got a number of questions already, so that's a good thing. I always
Sweet.
like having more than fewer. So start with this. Before I go any further, guys, all of you that are currently on, or if you're watching the replay, go to helpandseoout.com. If you are doing local SEO, go to helpandseoout.com. Go register for an account, right? Go sign up. And then what you can do is you can go in and you can submit your real local business clients' websites. This is not for lead gen sites. This is for real local business sites. But you can basically do local link exchanges so if you have local business clients that manage their websites, especially if they have blogs and things like that, then that's great because there's plenty of opportunities for you to link out to other local businesses that can be in the same industry as long as it's not in the same area, right? Because they're not competing. If they're not in the same service area, right, or area that the company serves, then they can link to the same industry in a different location, or they can link to other businesses in different industries in the same location. So you're either getting topical relevance from the link or geographic relevance or a combination of both when they're not really competing, but complementary. So for example, in my business, the tree service industry, linking out to a local landscaper in the same city would be relevant. That would be both topically relevant and geographically relevant because landscaping and tree services are very similar in their kind of service categories. And but they could also be in the same city because most tree service companies don't do landscaping work and most landscaping companies don't do like big tree service work. They might do tree pruning and tree planting, but a lot of the times they don't do like tree removal and stump grinding and things like that. And so I'm just giving you guys some examples because this is how you can go in and submit and say, look, here are some link opportunities that I'm submitting, which means like you submit 5 of your local business clients' websites and you specify which categories you're willing to link to and the location that the business is located in. And then when you submit link opportunities, now you'll receive invitations for link opportunities as well from other SEOs that have local business clients that are wanting to do the same thing. And this is an outstanding idea. It's Dave borrowed the developer. He borrowed off of the concept of help a reporter out, but this is specifically for local SEOs. And so I would encourage you to go check it out. Right now it's free because he's trying to get a bunch of users in there so that there can be a large inventory of link opportunities. Okay. So right now it's free. Go sign up, register an account, and get in there and start doing link exchanges with other local SEOs. I'm in there too, just to be clear. Okay. I just wanted to point, there's nothing to sell here, guys, nothing to pitch. Just go sign up and check it out. If you're doing local SEO, this is a fantastic way to secure links at no cost that can help you to perform better, your clients to perform better in local search. Okay. All right. Well, let's get into the questions. Alex is the first one. This was from a week ago. He says, hey, do you recommend checking if a domain is delisted, or how do you recommend, excuse me, if a domain is delisted from Google other than the site colon method? That's really the only method that I know how to do it is, or submit the domain to Search Console if you own the domain. Because if you submit it to Search Console and then you get a manual penalty notification, which you can just go to, settings or whatever it is in Search Console and look at the manual penalty or whatever notification section, and you'll know if it's been de-indexed. It'll tell you if it's been, de-indexed with a manual penalty. Otherwise, it could be algorithmic penalty, and you won't know it without searching because those don't show notifications in Search Console. Algorithmic penalties don't show notifications. It's only a manual penalty that shows that. So the only way that I know how to do it is site colon operator domain search to see what's currently indexed. But if it's an expired domain that hasn't been published for quite some time, it may have been de-indexed and you wouldn't know because the site colon operator isn't going to show anything that's indexed because it's been, a domain that has not, it's been, expired for a number of months or whatever it is. And Google, like those pages dropped out of the index. So you don't know. And we experienced that. Remember, we buy a ton of expired domains. That's a lot of what Semantic Links is built around. It's expired domains. And so, we buy literally hundreds of domains per month. That's not a joke. And because of that, there is always a small percentage of them that we find that even like right after we purchase them, we find out that they're domains that won't index. And so we have to replace those domains. And that happens, it's a very small percentage actually, but it does happen. And that's the only way that we search for it. We check it was once we publish a site, we don't submit all of our domains to Search Console anymore. We used to, but it became too hard to do because we literally manage over, I don't know, I think it's 8,000 domains now. And so it was very difficult to manage all of those across various search consoles and all of that. So by link service, we manage 2,500 domains currently, but we also have a ton of rebuilds, which rebuilds are, where we buy a custom domain and assign it to one client and one client only. And so again, with that, we have literally thousands and thousands of domains, and it's just very difficult to use Search Console because otherwise we'd put everything into one Search Console account. It was too hard to spread them across multiple accounts when you have that many domains. So we stopped doing that. So instead, what we do is we'll publish a site onto the domain, and then we submit it for indexing, and then we'll wait for a few days to see if it indexes before we will then assign it as a client domain, essentially. And if it doesn't index after a few days, we'll resubmit it and we'll give it another couple of days. And if it doesn't index after that, then we'll replace it. And we use the site colon operator domain search for that. Okay. Zypha says, do exact match domains work with any domain extension like .pro, .net, .org if .com is not available? Yeah, it can. I mean, I've used like .pro. That's not a top level extension, right? So felling.pro. But that's not a TLD, right? It's a vanity extension, I think is what they call them. But anyways, yeah, they still work because, like, for example, there's a .care domain, right? Well, that's supposed to be for like health services and healthcare stuff, right? But I've used the .care in domains that were set up with tree. So like the company name tree.care. So like, let's just say Benner's Tree Care, right? So Benner's Tree.care. And I've used those a number of times for tree service projects, and they rank. So typically, if you're going to use a kind of a vanity extension like that, you want to use an extension that would be relevant to that industry. Like, and what I'm saying is .care is supposed to be, I think, for healthcare stuff, but the .care name was relevant for a tree care company, right? Do you understand? So that's what I mean. Even though, because guys, like, think about like, I think .net, well, for example, .net, I think was supposed to be an extension that was supposed to be used for like technology companies and stuff like that way back when they first came up with TLDs. .orgs were supposed to be used for like nonprofits and things like that. But we all use those. Those are all top level domains that we use no matter what industry they're in. So I don't really care that .care was supposed to be for healthcare stuff. Who gives a shit? It still worked well for tree care stuff when the company name was tree care, because then I could get the company name tree.care, and that would be a great domain that we could use because, again, it almost acts like it's a branding name, but it's also kind of got the, in any case, it acts like an exact match domain or at least partial match domain. Right? So I've not had any problem ranking those, just to be clear. So not for local. It might affect if you're trying to do like national SEO stuff. It might be more difficult. I don't know because I don't do that kind of SEO. But in local, I've not seen any problem or had any I haven't had any problems ranking those types of domains. Okay. Sam says, do you have a standard list of questions you asked on every sales call? If so, what does that list look like? Well, I mean, I have a process that I go through. I don't really have a list of questions. I mean, I did years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when I first started selling consistently and started working on getting better at sales. But now I just kind of know it. You know what I mean? Just because I've been doing it for so long. But typically, just to be clear, what I start with, so I'm not going to give the list because I don't have a list prepared right now, but I can give you just a quick example. Look, when I'm talking, it depends on who I'm selling to, right? If I'm selling the SEOs, it's completely different. So when I'm selling white label link building services to SEO professionals, it's a completely different sales conversation. It's a different cadence. It's really more when I'm selling SEO services or link building services to SEO professionals. Really, all I do on those calls is I ask them questions about their business. Who are you? You know, what types of businesses do you tell me a little bit about your business? What types of clients do you work with? That kind of stuff. I let them answer all those questions so that I get a better understanding of who they are and what their business is about. And then I tell them right at a sales call, say, look, I've got, in just a minute, I'm going to grab the screen. We're going to jump into a presentation. I tend to go quickly and I don't even take a breath because I do these sales calls so often. I know them by heart. I know this presentation by heart. So if anything's unclear, please feel free to interrupt me. It's perfectly acceptable. I want you to understand what I'm trying to convey throughout this presentation. But we're going to go into that. And basically what I'm going to do is demonstrate what our process is. Just so you know, I don't do any hard sales tactics or closing tactics. At the end of this call, like you will know what our process is, and you can either choose to work with us or choose not to. You're not obligated to work with us whatsoever. And I just want to make sure that you're aware of that up front because I hate getting on sales calls where I know that a hard sales close is coming, right? I know that that's coming. I hate that. I hate that. Be transparent with me. So I tell them the prospect on the call right up front, I'm not going to hard close you. I'm going to show you our process. It's a very thorough presentation because I want you to be confident in using our services if you decide to use them for your agency clients. Does that sound fair? Is that agreeable? And they say, yeah, let's go. And then we go into it and I give the presentation and I close. When I do the sales calls, I literally close 70% of them. I now have a salesperson in my organization and he closes about 40% of them, 35 to 40%, about 3 or 4 out of every sales call that he goes on, he closes. Or 3 out of 4 out of every 10, excuse me. And so again, it's really about the demonstration process. Now, when I'm selling to tree care contractors, it's completely different. With tree care contractors, really, I go into it with, like I tell them right out of the gate on the listing delivery call, which is the start of the sales conversation. First thing we do is, hey, I want to show you the listing. We're going to review that and we're going to, I want to make sure that you're happy with it and everything is accurate. If we need to add any detail to it or take anything out away from it, that's perfectly fine. We can do that. There's no cost to it. Then after that, we're going to transition into some issues that I identified when optimizing your directory listing. We found some issues that are preventing you from getting jobs within the areas that you claimed you wanted to get jobs within. And we'd like to present those issues to you and then show you some low-cost solutions that are going to help you to start to resolve that. Does that sound fair? Should we continue this call? And then I nod my head as I ask that question. And I've never had once a tree service guy say, no, I'm not interested. Like, we can just wrap it up now. Like, no, thanks. No, they all say, yeah, let's go. And so then I go into the directory. We just have a brief conversation. I show them the directory listing. If they're on a Zoom call, then I will grab my screen and show them. If they're on a phone call, which a lot of tree guys are, then I will send them a text message and say, are you in front of a computer or can you view a link if I send it to you via text? And if they say yes, then I'll say, okay, boom, I just sent it to you because this is all done in high level, right? I'm in the high level screen talking to them through the high level phone where I have the text and email and all their contact data and everything is all right there in front of me. And then I just send them a text message with the link to their directory listing and say, okay, pull that up on your phone and put me on speaker so that you can review it as we're talking. And then I'll talk through it. So this is your logo. This is the description. These are your services. Does anything need updated? Are you happy with it? Blah, blah, blah. Once we get through that, which usually is about a 10-minute conversation, Then I say, okay, as I mentioned before, I'm going to transition now to where some of the issues that we identified are preventing you from getting jobs within your area. Would you like to continue? And then they typically say yes. And then I will ask them, right? Also, throughout the process, I will show them, like, for example, the service area radius image that we created when we ask them. Remember, as I told you at the top of this call today, Hump Day Hangouts, I mentioned that we have automations that once we get a cold email response from a contact from the directory outreach process, that they get piped into high level, and then the automations take over that ask them a series of follow-up questions via email, SMS, and voice when using the AI integration. When not using the AI integration, it's done via email and SMS only. But it asks them things like, hey, thank you for confirming that the information for your directory listing is accurate, or thank you for sending updated data for your directory listing. We're going to optimize your directory listing and send it to you in the next couple of days for you to review. That's the first acknowledgement message that goes out that acknowledges that they replied to the cold email and that we received their reply. Then 7 minutes later, there's an automation that sends an email, and I think about 2 minute wait period after the email or something like that, that then there's another SMS that goes out that says, hey, by the way, while we're optimizing your listing or while you're setting up your listing, how far out do you go to get jobs? Essentially, what is your service area radius in miles? And then they reply back. It says right in the message, just reply back with 10 or 10 miles or something like that. When they reply back, then it sends another acknowledgement. It's like a 2 minute wait period or whatever, 7 minute wait. It's some between 2 minutes and 7 minutes. I can't remember which one it is. But it then sends out another acknowledgement saying, okay, thanks, got it. Your service area radius is, and then it repeats what they sent us. 10 miles, 15 miles, whatever it is. We're going to add a map image to your directory listing that shows your sales territory so that when people are visiting your page, they know exactly whether they are within the area that you serve or not. We'll send this to you for review as soon as it's done. So what I'm saying is on the call, when I'm on that sales call with them, and then we get to that transition period, and I tell them, my former partner at TreeCare HQ for a period of time, his name was Harry, he called it the pivot point of the sales conversation. And that is where we pivot away from here's your directory listing to now we've identified some issues. And on the call, again, I can, if we're on a Zoom meeting, I can show them. If they're not on a Zoom meeting, I can text them with the short link. I've got 2 ready to go SMS texts that are ready to fire off to the contact while I'm on the phone with them if we're on a phone instead of Zoom call. And it says, well, so because they're always curious. They always want to know, like, what problems were identified? And we say, well, when we first contacted you about your directory listing, we asked you what your service area radius was, like how far out you go to get jobs. And you told us it was whatever it is, 20 miles, whatever it is. So here's where you told us you want to get jobs from. Boom, we send them a text message or I show it on the screen, depending on how we're engaged. It's a short link in the text message that when they click, it opens up to a map image that shows where their Google Business Profile in the center of this circle. And then the circle is the radius of where they told us they want to work. Then we say, well, here's where you're actually getting jobs according to Google. And we send a second link, which is the link to a local search grid report, which is just an image of a local search grid report that is the same shape and the same radius as what they claimed their desired service area is. And typically it's going to show like one little speck of green in the middle, and the rest is all just a sea of red, so to speak. And so we say, well, this is where you're actually getting jobs from Google, or at least according to Google, and only the areas in green. So we've got some low-cost solutions that can help you to start to resolve this as you start to secure more jobs from a broader, wider area than where you're currently only getting jobs from Google. And then from there, they'll say, oh, wow, I didn't know that or something like that. And then I will ask them. So before we get into that, let me ask you a question. What happens when a sales call or a call comes in for somebody requesting tree services or requesting an estimate or a quote for tree services? Walk me through the process. And then I shut up and by the way, this is the spin selling method, guys. This is, again, one of the most powerful selling strategies that I've ever come across. And that's what I kind of used as my sales process, which is spin selling is an acronym, SPIN, situation, problem, implication, need, payoff. It's a book called Spin Selling by, I think, Neil Rackham is his name. The book is good, but it's very long. If you're going to listen to it on an audio, it's also very long. It's great, but it's very long. So they have a spin selling field book, and that is a field book that is much more actionable. It's basically taking the concepts from the book and putting them into action plans and things that you can practice and all that kind of stuff. I recommend any of you that are considering using the spin selling method in your own agency, which is a great method, is to get the spin selling field book and just work through that. Save yourself the 7 or 8 hours of listening time and however many hours that would be in reading time of the main book and just get the field book. But anyways, you ask the prospect questions and but leading questions, but you ask a question and shut up and let them answer it. Because too many sales calls, like again, on my semantic link sales calls, it is more about me just presenting what we do. I'll answer questions as we go, but I don't ask them a lot of questions. But on sales calls with tree guys, I do ask them lots of questions because I want them with their own words, in their own words, I want them to tell me how inefficient their process is. And they don't even realize it until you ask them these questions. And then as they are explaining what their process is for how they handle and manage leads that come into their business, they come to the realization through their own words that their process sucks and that they need help. And that's why I ask these questions. Mr. Contractor, what happens? Walk me through the process of what happens when a call or a web form, a contact form submission comes in for a quote request, an estimate request. Tell me what the process is. And then I shut up and if I have to give them some additional kind of leading, give them a little bit more detail. Say, like, for example, if a call comes in, are you able to answer the phone? Most of the time, some of the time, very, very little, because you're up in a tree, you're running equipment, you're managing a crew, you're driving you're driving from one job to another, you don't answer the phone, whatever. Do you answer the phone? Does it go to voicemail? Do you have a receptionist? If it's a web form submission, how are you notified of it? Do you receive an SMS when a contact form has been submitted from your website? Do you get your email notifications regularly, etc.? What happens then? Do you call them back immediately at the end of the day? When do you call them back? Okay, now that you've scheduled the estimate, what do you do as far as follow-ups, right? How do you follow up with them? Via email, SMS? Is it automated or manual? What do you do with existing clients? Do you follow up with them to offer them additional services? Do you follow up with them to ask for a review? So I ask them these types of questions, and they just tell me how most tree guys have very terrible processes. A lot of them work on, literally notebooks and paper. So again, through those questions, they start to come to the realization that they have issues. Because I always ask, typically I ask a tree contractor too, like, what is it that you need most in your business right now? And the vast majority of, not all of them, but the vast majority of them are going to say, I need more leads. I need more jobs coming in, more leads. And that's when I ask them, well, walk me through the process of what happens when a quote request comes in, a lead comes in. And then we go through that whole spiel that I just mentioned to you, because then I get to the point where I say, so what you're telling me is that you might not actually have a lead problem. You might actually have a lead management problem, right? Because if you have an inefficient process, which again, in their own words, most of the time they've come to the realization through me asking questions and them talking that they've got an issue with lead management more so than leads. Yes, they might also need more leads. But if, let's say that a contractor gets on average 20 leads in a month, but they only close 4 of them, right? So 20% of those leads out of the month, they should have a much higher conversion rate. And if they have an inefficient process for follow-up and responding quickly to a call request, an estimate request, all of those kind of things, if all of that is inefficient, then they are losing leads almost as fast as they are generating them. In other words, it's like having a bucket with a hole in it. And you're pouring water in the top, but there's water coming out of the bottom because there's a hole in the bucket, right? And so that's what I use that as kind of an analogy when I'm talking to tree contractors. I say, so you leads coming in currently. You say you need more leads, but you're not actually converting a lot of the leads that you're currently already receiving because of inefficiencies in your process that are allowing those leads to go cold or to get serviced by some other contractor because of your inefficient process. Is that a fair statement? And then again, I nod, and that's a question asking them that typically is going to elicit a yes response. And I nod my head when I ask those types of questions. Even if we're on a phone, I still do it because it's just habit, number one. And I think it really does influence the conversation. I mean that on when somebody can see me visually on a Zoom call, it does influence the conversation. They'll say, is that a fair statement? Your process is inefficient? That, yeah, pretty much. I guess so. They'll say stuff like that, and I'll say, okay, well then, here's the thing. We can help you to start generate more leads, right? There's a number of things that we can do to help improve the service area, like where Google's going to send you leads from. That's going back to that service area radius image. And there's things that we can do to help you to generate more business from existing clients too, which those are always the best. But really, we shouldn't be focusing on generating more leads for your business until we start to plug that hole in your lead bucket, right? So in other words, until we start to make your process more efficient and help you to manage those leads more effectively. Is that a fair statement? Does that sound reasonable? Yes, right? Then I say, okay, well, here's what we have. Here are the low-cost options that I told you I was going to present to you to help you to start to resolve the issues that we're discussing today. And then that's where I'll pitch them on, like, here's the 3 different services. And I'll talk, depending on what specifically they're listing. When we were developing their listing, my VAs assign notes in the contact record in high level of which of the services are most appropriate for them, which sometimes is more than one, right? We have we have 4 front-end services now. We have local lead generation websites, so that's the website offer, Google Business Basic SEO, Google Business offer, and we have the reviews service offer, which includes a comeback campaign or database reactivation campaign, okay? And then we have now an AI answering service that we also pitch as a front-end service. So those are our 4 front-end services, and depending on what the VA, my team member, had determined in the delivery publishing process, what the most, kind of the biggest needs are for that particular contact, all of that is referenced in the contact record in high level, so that when I get on the sales call, I already know specifically which services, I'm going to present to them. Sometimes, like I said, it's more than one. And then through that conversation, if I find out that they are resistive to having multiple services all at once, because each one is a separate subscription, right? So LOG sites, $99 a month. Google Business Basic SEO, $99 a month. Review generation and comeback campaigns or database reactivation, $99 a month. AI answering service, $199 a month. So I might suggest to them 2 or 3 of the front end services, which could be like bundled together, $297 a month for the LOG sites, Google Business Basic SEO, and review generation or review management service, right? That would be $297 a month. But because they don't know me yet, we've tried to build rapport through the conversations that we've had with them, mostly automated, etc. But they might not be ready to commit to that much yet, right? To commit to that, even though that's very low. Remember, guys, I pitched for the first 2 years of running TrueCare HQ. All I did was pitch Google Business SEO retainer starting at $850 a month. That was my only offer. There was no other offers, and I still was able to close about 30% of the sales calls that I would get on with that offer. But now they're much lower paced offers. And so even if the client or the contact, is really would benefit from multiple services, a lot of the times they're not ready to pull the trigger on a higher kind of retainer value because they don't know me yet. They don't know whether I can actually produce what I'm going to say. And they've been burned by other SEO companies. Many of them have. So that's why, again, I will pitch to them each and introduce to them the services that I think are most relevant to their business needs at that current moment. Which, by the way, the answering service is becoming one of the best sellers or kind of best offers to pitch right now, because that's one of the problems that a lot of tree guys have is when phone calls come in, they're not able to answer it because they're busy. And so having an answering service answer the phone helps to capture more of those leads that would otherwise hang up and call the next contractor. So that is one of the better services. But to get back to what I was saying, if I'm only going to end up ultimately directing the contact into selecting one service only because that's all they're willing to spend on right now, it's only $99 a month, I'm going to recommend the review service. Why is that? Well, because the review service will help to improve their reputation. And if they have a customer list, which I always ask that on the call, do you have a customer list already, an existing customer list that then you can send to me and I can import it into my system, which will then start sending out review request campaigns to all of those contacts. And if we can get enough reviews in, so review velocity in a fairly short amount of time, and that's variable depending on the other competitors, what their review velocity is, etc. But typically for a tree guy, let's just say, for example, if in the next 10 days, 10 to 14 days, I could get them 20 reviews in their Google business profile over the next 10 to 14 days. that is usually going to show significant improvement in Google Business Profile performance in map search too. Like in other words, it helps the the GBP to perform better in map search. They are instantly going to see an increase in their reputation. And because of that, because it's a low cost kind of thing that we can do, that can usually not only just improve their reputation, but also help to improve their Google Business Profile performance in map search, then that is usually what I'm going to lead with. Unless we have a conversation with a contractor that already has a fairly decent number of leads, but they're losing a lot of their leads, in which case, because they're not following up in a timely manner, et cetera, in which case I might pitch the answering service instead. Hopefully that's clear. But again, just to kind of walk back through what I was saying, guys, the process that I go through is a very question-driven process for tree care contractors. For semantic links clients, which are other SEO professionals, it's a presentation-driven sales process where I just demonstrate my process. That's usually all I need to do to close them, because they see, wow, there's a lot of research that goes in there, or data analysis that goes into how he builds links. But with Tree Guys, again, we're not talking about the SEO components, right? I mean, we talk about, hey, in order to have better online exposure, you need to have certain elements done properly, and they all need to kind of work together. And these are the different components. We can put them all together for you, or you can order them separately, like a la carte, so to speak. But based upon our conversation today, Mr. Contractor, this is what I recommend as the most that you should prioritize right now, which is usually going to either be reviews or AI answering service. Okay. So that was a great question. Guys, I'm telling you I think one of the most important things if you're going to be selling local marketing, and I don't even want to say SEO services anymore, because we should be doing a lot more than just SEO in order to be effective for our clients, especially now that search, like traditional search, is declining in market share. We should be calling ourselves local marketers, not local SEOs. Seriously. And so one of the best things that you can do in your business is learn how to identify an industry, figure out how to help that specific industry with marketing type services and business building, business operations, business building services, business operations, applications, things like that make their business more efficient, right? And then learn how to sell that to them. So booking sales calls and then, fine tuning or dialing in that sales process, that's going to have the biggest impact on your revenue. It's not learning the next new SEO tactic or the next new, app out there or chat model or something like that that's going to produce better content. All of that, it can help you to get results for clients. But if you don't have a client base to generate revenue, to produce income for your business and for you personally and your family, then what is the point of learning the other new SEO tactics, right? That's why I recommend everybody should be focusing first and foremost on how to sell marketing services to a particular industry. That should be your primary goal when entering this industry, in my perspective, or in my view, instead of learning how to do SEO, right? Because everything that we're doing in SEO and in digital marketing, so to speak now, the broader digital marketing, is evolving so quickly that the tactics are constantly going to change, but marketing principles do not. Do you understand that? Marketing and sales principles don't change. They're foundational, they're fundamental. And so if you focus in on learning how to sell marketing services to a particular industry, which, my recommendation, then no matter what the actual services are or the deliverables are, you'll be successful, right? And that's it. But always focusing on the SEO tactics and not the sales side of things. The SEO tactics don't generate the revenue unless you're in affiliate marketing or something like that, right? You have to sell the SEO tactics to local businesses in order to generate revenue from them. So learn how to sell first, right? But how do you learn how to sell? Learn learn what is important to a particular business industry and figure out what their business is suffering from. You're going to find commonalities. If you have enough conversations with business owners in a particular industry, you will find common problems that most of them struggle with. Those are your offers. Those are your first offers, the offers that they are struggling with. You develop solutions to help them solve those problems that are common across many of those businesses in that industry. And then that becomes your offer. And then so now you got a good offer. Now you got to refine your sales presentation and your pitch. Those are the offer is the most important in my opinion, because with a proper offer, it doesn't take much selling. But then once you have a proper offer, when it comes to sales, it's going through practice, trial and erroring, different angles, different messages, all kinds of stuff to figure out what converts the best. Over time, you will continue to get better and better and better, right? Like I said, I could do my sales presentations, especially for semantic links, in my sleep. No kidding. I mean, I go on autopilot when I get on a sales presentation for semantic links because I've done it so many damn times. So the biggest impact on my business, guys, and since I've been doing SEO for like 15 years now, I've been doing SEO. And what had the biggest impact on the revenue of my business was focusing intentionally on learning how to sell. That had way more of an impact on my revenue than anything else I've learned in this industry, any SEO tactic or anything. That is not a joke, 100% true. Focusing in on learning marketing and sales improved my revenue significantly more than any SEO tactic that I've ever learned in 15 years. So, and again, guys, those are constantly going to change. We're in an industry where everything, all the tactics and the deliverables are going to change, but the foundational principles of marketing and sales and how to help a business become more efficient, those are not going to change, right? That was a great question. I appreciate it very much, Sam. Thank you. John says, and we're going to move on because we're going to run out of time if I don't hurry up. John says, what's your take on VO and its impact on SEO? I think it will require new metadata and schema structures other than the just video object schema. Yeah, maybe. Probably going to be some, I don't know. I've not done a lot. I don't do a lot of video SEO stuff, guys, just to be clear. I really don't. I haven't had, I don't. For video stuff, I typically just run Google Ads, Google Ads for video because it's so much easier to set up. So I don't know. I've not spent any time even thinking about that, John, and I would have to think about that a little bit more. And then again, since I'm not really doing video SEO campaigns, I would have to do any testing. I could have an opinion on it, but without testing, it's just speculation. And so you're asking, and don't take this the wrong way, but you're asking me to speculate, and I'm not going to do that because I don't know. I would have to think through that before I could even have a proper speculation. That makes sense. So I'm going to move on. Tiz says, have you ever seen faster content decay cycles with AI progressing? I don't know. That's not something that I've been able to measure, right? So decay is like how effective is a link within a piece of content, that the decay rate or if that's what she's referring Tiz, or that's who this person is referring. That's what this person is referring to. I think of link decay or link atrophy, which is when a link loses value over time, depending on traffic is kind of the determining factor of that, right? Which is, so if a page URL contains a link to whatever you're linking to, if that page URL receives traffic and click-throughs from that link gets clicked through, that is the best types of signals. That slows the decay or atrophy rate the most, because the page is receiving traffic and the link is receiving clicks. So that's engagement on the link itself. So that is the slowest decay rate. Then if the page gets traffic, but the link doesn't get clicked, or very, very, very little does it ever get clicked, then it will decay faster than it does if the link is getting clicks, but still a fairly slow decay rate or atrophy rate. Okay. If the domain gets traffic, but the page doesn't get any traffic or very, very little traffic, then the link will decay even faster, right? Because now the page isn't even receiving traffic, which means the link isn't getting any clicks, but the domain is, and the page is part of a domain. So it's still going to decay, and it's going to decay faster than if the page was receiving traffic. If the domain itself doesn't get any traffic or very little traffic, that is the type of link that will decay the fastest, right? And so how much does it decay? I don't know. I don't even know how to measure that, to be honest with you. That's why we typically recommend, if you're going to be building links from sources that don't have a lot of traffic, that you continue to build additional links, because they are going to lose value over time because they don't have a lot of traffic. Now, those sites might end up increasing in traffic, which means the link could actually gain strength. If the site is gaining in traffic, then the link can actually gain strength. But that's not that. I'm not saying that's not typical, because it is. If you start a new site, like a new blog, and you're publishing content and doesn't have a lot of followers, doesn't have much user base, not a lot of readers, etc., but you keep adding content to that blog and it gains in authority and starts to gain followers and readers, etc., that can actually increase in traffic over time, which can actually increase the value of the links on that domain. But if it's like a rebuild, like a PBN type of site where you bought an expired domain and you rebuilt it and used it for link equity, etc., and then the domain gets no traffic or very little traffic, the link from that is going to decay at one of the fastest rates. Again, it's still going to provide value for months and months and months, if not for even years. But it does decay in that it will lose value over time because of the lack of traffic. So that's why I recommend when using those types of links that you continue to build new links. Okay. Moving on. Sam says, I have noticed that Perplexity AI and ChatGPT are becoming significant sources of my traffic. AI is sending me real leads. How do you suggest to grow this further? Publish more content across more platforms, not the main money site. Publish more branded content that is always tying the products or services or locations back to the company. Publish more branded content across more platforms. That's how you're going to do it, right? And make sure that it's on the platforms that are typically ingested by the large language models. There was a really interesting article. If I can find it, I'll show you. It's in this. It should be right here. So right here, this is it. I'm going to put this in chat, guys. This is brightedge.com/perplexity. Okay, so for those of you that aren't on the live call or you're just listening to it or whatever, if you go to brightedge.com/perplexity, or excuse me, perplexity, this shows you how the different, or this is an article that shows how some of the large language models are using, like which large language models are that they typically and frequently ingest content from. So like, for example, this is showing in Perplexity that these domains have high visibility in Perplexity citations, but much lower in Google Search Generative Experience citations, right? Or SGE citations. And that is Yahoo, MarketWatch, CNBC, and Reddit, right? And so this is just a pretty interesting article. I'm going to put this in chat, guys, that just shows some of the, depending on the different industries and things like that, the query is regarding, will show. Like, for example, business to business tech. In Perplexity, it's sourcing content from or in ingesting from Reddit, Geeks for Geeks, and Kaspersky, excuse me, Kaspersky. For e-commerce, it's Amazon and Wikipedia. For education, it's these, right? So this just shows finance, right? CNBC, Fool, Investopedia, NerdWallet. So with some searches of AI models, large language models, you could do some prompts to ask them. And a lot of the times you can extract this information from the AI chat as to which sources do you source content from, or do you ingest content from in this particular industry, right? And you can ask it. You might need to prompt chain a few prompts to get it to respond with an accurate list. But then you would start, then what I recommend is trying to find out how do you publish content onto those platforms. In some cases, it's easy to do, but in some cases, you might have to figure out ways to get content published on the platform. But that's how you can start to manipulate large language models, guys, is by producing a lot of branded content that are going to tie the company back to the products and services that you're promoting, and then publishing content across various platforms so that the different language models that ingest content from different platforms now have content out there that is always tying the company back, or the products and services and or locations back to the company that you are promoting. Okay. Good question. Alex says, hey, Bradley, I watched the State of Local SEO YouTube vid from 526 where you were talking about publishing branded content to the large language models. That's funny. That's perfect follow-up question. Could you give us some examples of a workflow you would use for WordPress, Tumblr, Medium, G Site, Strikingly, et cetera, on how you would actually hook those up so you don't have to manually prompt GPT, copy and paste? Well, yeah. I mean, I can't give you any examples here because we're going to run out of time anyways. But like, for example, if you're using like N8N, right, you can have AI agents in there where you can have whatever you're using as a trigger for your content source, whether it's an RSS feed or a direct connection with the platform. So let's say you're using Medium as your content source, for example, or let's go with Blogger, because I don't know if Medium has an RSS feed, but I know Blogger does. I would assume Medium does, but I'm not 100% sure. I know Blogger does though. So let's just say you're using Blogger as your content source. Like that's what you're going to use as your starting point of your content for publishing branded content across multiple platforms. Then you would have an N8N, you would have the listener, right, which would be listening or looking for a new entry item in the RSS feed Or if it's just a direct connection instead of an RSS trigger, it's looking for a new post published on the blog or blog. Then once it receives that data from that post, whether it's the RSS feed or from the direct connection, then it would push that article into a ChatGPT that with a prompt that then would have instructions to rewrite the article, but keep the the prompt could be as elaborate as you wanted to, but basically rewrite the article, keeping the structure intact, but using entity variants, et cetera, which by the way, you can feed that chat model. If you're in a single industry, you could feed that chat model with all of the entities that are relevant and examples of content, et cetera, so that it has a database that it can then pull from, so that when it is rewriting content, it has guidelines specifically of how it's going to rewrite the content based upon the data that you input into the chat to prime the chat, so to speak, right? And so now, again, it's just a multi-step automation that can be done within NA and probably others as well, but that's the only one that I've used. And that was, again, it takes the content, then it sends it from the original source, sends it into the ChatGPT, tells it to rewrite it with the whatever guidelines you put in the prompt, and then to republish it onto Medium. Then that same piece of content could then be republished, now rewritten again and republished on WordPress.com, Tumblr, etc. So it's not hard to do. You just have to have the application to do it, and then you have to set it all up. And once it's set up, then it can run on autopilot. Each time you publish an article, and by the way, you can even automate publishing content to the original blog that is the trigger, right? You can automate that too. So again, it all comes back to just kind of setting it all up and then test with it and all of that. And then you just kind of refine the prompts and everything to keep making it better as you go, which again, guys, that's if you go into one single industry, it makes all of this so much easier. Imagine trying to do this across 8 industries, like a lot of the local SEOs I know do. They'll work with any client that will look in their direction. Imagine trying to set all this up and all these chats and everything else for all these different industries. Screw all that. I'm going to do it one time, and I'm going to keep making it better and better and better. Okay. And it's going to be, in my opinion, that's a much more efficient way to run a business. Okay. Okay, so anyways, that's a conceptual explanation of how to do that. There's plenty of videos on YouTube, guys, not on our channel, but about how to automate stuff with N8N and how to build AI agents and how to chain those things together and all of that. So just go to YouTube and search for N8N AI agent automation and things like that, and you will find plenty of examples that you can then model to set your own up. Okay. Josh says, hey, I just joined a mastermind. Should we do neighborhoods on the LLG sites, even in an industry where people are searching by big cities and state? No, maybe not. Maybe not neighborhoods. You could do, I just had a conversation with a new mastermind member. It wasn't Josh, but somebody else, Jay. Anyways, about doing something similar, but where if you would target, like if it's a company, like the industry that you're in, it doesn't get so granular, which is, I think, what you're saying in your question. Then you could target like the hierarchy of location pages on the site. I would start with like top level states and then metro areas, metropolitan areas within that state. So you would have a top level page of state, then a child page of metro areas. Because remember, a metro area is typically going to cover multiple counties. And then each county has its own set of cities, towns, census designated places, incorporated communities, unincorporated communities, etc. So if you're doing larger projects, then it makes sense to build the components at larger scale. In other words, start with state pages, metropolitan areas, and then you can target individual cities within the metropolitan area as posts. Remember, if we're talking about WordPress, in the taxonomy structure, we would have top level parent pages and child pages, which would be categories and subcategories. And then you could publish posts into the subcategory. So if you're talking about a top level state with the subcategory and child page being a metropolitan area, and then from within that metropolitan area, there is a number of counties typically, and each county is going to have a number of cities, towns, etc. So then you would just extract the individual cities or towns that you want would be important to that client, and then you would have posts published so the URL structure would be domain.com/state/region, metro region /individual city, which would be at the post level at that point, right? Hopefully that's clear. And yes, you can do that. Guys, just keep in mind, The more focused a site, the better it performs in search as it relates to local. So the more focused you get the topics or service categories, and the more focused you get the geography, the area that you're targeting, the better it's going to perform, and the quicker it will perform. So if you're targeting large components, large geographic areas like that, it depends on the competition levels, but typically those don't perform quite as well, and it's going to take more effort in order for them to rank well, just to be clear. All right, I've got a couple more. I'm going to try to roll through these very quickly. Zypher says for email warm-up settings and instantly, what should be daily sending limit for new accounts? I currently have it set to 15. For warm-up settings, I'd leave it to default, which I think is 30 per day, but it ramps up. Remember, Zypher, in the instantly settings, I'd leave it at the default settings, which I think is 30 per day for warm-up. But in the settings, it says there's an option to turn on the gradual warm-up or to disable it. By default, it should be enabled for gradual warm-up. So I think on day 1, it sends out 2 emails. Day 2, it's 4. Day 3, it's 6. Day 4, it's 8. And it does that for the first 15 days until it gets to 30 emails per day or something like that. It's some sort of progression like that. So I just leave it to the default settings, but I have the warm-up progression enabled so that it's doing it slowly over 2 weeks or whatever. Okay. And then I keep my email accounts to no more than additional 20 emails per day from each account. So if it's doing 30 emails per day from each email account as warm-up, then I will add an additional 20 emails per day or actual emails. That's a total of 50 per day per account, per email account. I try to limit to that. You can go over that just to be clear, but I've had the same domains been mailing for over, and I haven't burned a single one of them. There's a few of them that have the health score has dropped down to 95% or lower, which is my threshold for then removing them from cold emailing campaigns, but leaving them in warm up and see if they will recover. And once the health score goes back up to 98 plus, 98, 99, or 100, then I will put those back into the cold email campaigns. And I've been able to do that a couple of times where I've seen the health score decline for a particular domain, but then removed it from cold emailing, but left it in the warm-up process for 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is. And the health score comes back up because it's recovered. And then we plug it back into cold emailing. I have not had to replace the domain one time in over a year, knock on wood. Okay. Huzzy says, if there was a provider like Citation Vault that had citations that actually index and state index, would you build those to your money site? No, I would still build them to the ID page because a service like that will be easily discoverable because of, they all have the same type of format and everything else. So no, I would still use the ID page as the primary link building target for that, not the money site or some other buffer. ID page is perfect for that. A Google site would be good for that. So if a client is renting an LOG site and the site drops in rankings, would you pause this subscription until it's ranking again? I have seen multiple LOGs, mine bouncing from position 1 to 10 down to 70 and 90 and back up to 1 to 10 about 10 times in a single month. I have no idea why Google can't make a decision to rank it or not, but it's something you would factor in your pricing. Not for $99 a month. Like, if I was renting sites out, like what a lot of rank and rent guys will tell you to do, like 500 a month, 1,000 a month, 1,500 a month, whatever. Yeah, of course. Unless it's ranking, I would absolutely drop the price or pause the billing, but that's very difficult to do. And by the way, I've never found anytime I've ever tried to do a rank and rent site where I've rented the site out for a high dollar value, like what I just described, they don't stick. The renters don't stick. So why do that? I think that's a silly way to do it. Honestly, if you're going to do rank and rent, find low competition areas so that you can rank sites easily with very little effort and rent them for very inexpensive so that it's not even a thought. Right? Remember, $99 a month is less than the cost of a cup of coffee per day, right? Think about that. So if you're renting on an LOG site for $99 a month and it's generating leads, 2 out of 4 weeks of the month, in my opinion, that's enough, right? Because look, typically when I sell a lead to a tree service, if I'm selling on a pay per lead basis, my bottom line is going to be $75 for a lead. Like they're going to pay $75 per lead. So if I'm charging a month to rent a rank and rent site and it produces 2 leads in a month, I don't care whether it's ranked the whole month or not, as long as it produces 2 leads that month, it's already more increased the value of, or it's basically 2 leads a month. The contractor is already receiving more value than if he were to buy leads from me directly. You understand? And so no, I don't, not for $99 a month. For $99 a month, I'm going to try to keep it ranked as much as possible. If they want to cancel, they're free to cancel at any time, but I'm not going to pause their billing when it's not ranked at the top of search. Like, no, that's SEOs. Things are volatile. They're going to move up and down all the time. From day to day, things fluctuate. So there's no way I'm doing that on rank and rent model. If you want to do that kind of stuff, Huzzy, then make sure that you're just charging on a pay per lead basis. That's a hell of a lot easier to manage than trying to start and stop or start and pause billing all the time, depending on the ranking position. Screw that. That's way too much work. You're either a low enough cost to where it doesn't really matter. As long as it's producing, they should be happy to keep it for that low of a cost. If it's not producing, then they can cancel. Fine. You can just go rent it out to their competitor or do pay per lead. So then you don't have to worry about that. It doesn't matter whether it's ranking or not, because all they're paying for is leads that were generated from the site. When I do pay per lead, if a tree contractor were to call me and say, hey, the site that I'm buying leads from isn't ranking right now, I say, so? Is there a point to you? Well, yeah, I mean, I'm paying for leads. You're right. You're paying for leads. You're not paying for rankings. You're paying for leads. The leads come when it's ranking. So it's in my best interest to get it to rank so that I can make money from the site. But again, it's like, and I'm not that crude about it, right? A little bit more diplomatic about it. But I do ask when somebody says, well, hey, the site's not really ranking right now. So yeah, but you're not paying me to rank the site. You're paying me for leads. And so my goal is to get you leads from that site. But the site's going to fluctuate. That's normal. Okay. All right, last question. Is feeding ChatGPT and other AI software the info you want it to know about your SEO goals the right way to implement SEO for AI? I don't know about that specific, Chris. Like with your question about what your SEO goals are, the right way to implement SEO. What I do, feed in a bunch of content that I've developed, whether written content, audio content, video content, whatever. I feed all that stuff into a ChatGPT so that or to a chat so that the language model or the chat, the AI can write in my voice as if it were me. Okay. Also, I feed it in all the information that I want it to use when drafting content or answering questions or anything else, so that I basically tell it to confine itself to whatever data that I feed into that chat so that it's not fabricating details or hallucinating and making stuff up like AI chats are known to do. And so we're basically putting guide rails on the chat and feeding it in the content that we want it to source or reference when it is answering questions that we are, or queries that we are asking it, right? And then it will develop content based around that, the data that we fed into it. So, for example, I feed in, to ChatGPT or Grok. I use Grok more than anything, but I feed into Grok like all, recent trainings that I've done for semantic mastery, so that when I am developing content, I can go query Grok and have it, help me to develop the content based upon my own teachings instead of others out there that might not jive with me. Because if I just ask a question in Grok without using a pre-trained chat, and I ask it questions about SEO, it's going to return information to me from other SEOs, from other content that's suggested on the web, which might not be congruent with my methods. So instead, I created a chat that has all of my methods that I constantly am adding new data into, so that when I want to have it answer questions based upon what it understands about my methods, then I can query it and it will return data around used from what it understands about me and my methods, if that's clear. Same thing goes with local businesses, guys. If you, again, look, I have a general tree service kind of chat that is about stuff that's important to tree service contractors. I have another chat for tree service marketing that I've fed in a bunch of my stuff that I've produced, right? But I also have a chat, like I said, for where I've fed in FAQs and content from other tree contractor sites and things like that, so that when a contractor is asking me questions about like, well, how can we promote this or whatever, I can go to that chat and I can query it, make a few queries, and then I can go back to the contractor and say, here's what I've developed as a marketing campaign for this particular service or whatever. See what I'm saying? And so that's how you guys can become a lot more effective in any one industry, is by developing your own chats specific for that industry. So that, again, all of your messaging and everything is on point. And that's why I recommend having one industry versus multiple industries, because setting all of this up for multiple industries is just way too much work, in my opinion. I would just rather just constantly refine the chats and the prompts for one industry so that I could keep getting better and more effective in that industry. That's clear. Okay. All right, guys, we're way over 10 minutes. So I think I'm going to wrap it up. I don't think I see any comments or questions that really need to be. What about feeding large language model directly? That's what I was talking about, Christine. Chris David was talking about feeding the chat directly with content. URLs, videos to podcasts, or URLs to podcasts. You can upload files directly in some cases, right? PDFs, things like that. So I recommend that. I've been doing a lot of that lately, which is just creating my own chats where I feed it a bunch of data, and that becomes the bucket that the chat is going to pull information from. Okay. All right, guys, I got to wrap it up. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll see everybody next week.